In this video, we are going to look at the connection between multiplying fractions and multiplying decimals. Let's be sure that the date and topic are at the top. Of course, we also have an essential question for this video. In this video, we want to know how we can use fractions to multiply decimals. And this also just serves as a good chance for us to reach back and remember our rules for multiplying fractions. We all know that fractions and decimals are related. We know, for example, that 1/10 as a fraction is equivalent and the same as 1/10 written as a decimal. We know 1/4 is the same as the decimal 25/100ths. And we know that we can write 2/5 as a decimal by first calling it the equivalent fraction 4/10, which means we can then write it as a decimal 4 in the tenths place, 4/10. Since we've already worked with multiplying fractions quite a bit, we can use what we know about that to help us work our way up to multiplying decimals. When we first started multiplying fractions, of course, we used models, but then we realized very quickly that it was a little more convenient to use an algorithm. With that algorithm, we knew that we could find the product of 1/10 times 1/10 by first multiplying the numerators, 1 times 1, and then multiplying the denominators, 10 times 10. So we knew that it would be 1/100th. Because of that, I also know then that if I want to multiply 1/10 times, I'm going to use the multiplication symbol here for this one so it doesn't look like a decimal, times 1/10, that it will give me 1/100th. And here's my 1 in the hundredths place, right? I know that these two numbers are equivalent, right? So that's how I'm able to know that 1/10 times 1/10 is 100th. And I can use that connection to help me find the product of any set of decimals that might be multiplied together. Let's say, for example, I wanted to know the product of 3/10 times 2 3/10. Right? I might not yet have a great strategy for multiplying decimals, but I do know how to turn those into fractions that I can multiply. So I know that 3/10 is 3/10, written this way, and I know that 2 3/10 could be written as 2 3/10. Right? To multiply these fractions, I need to remember my steps of the algorithm. The first is that I need to make sure they're both fractions. That means while this one's already a fraction, I will need to use my wheel process to help me turn this mixed number into an improper fraction. So I'm going to do 10 times 2 is 20, plus 3 is 23. So that's going to make this 23/10. Now I can just do what I've done before. I can multiply my numerators. 3 times 23 would be 69. And my denominators, 10 times 10 would be 100. Because of this, I can then put it back into my decimal form. 69/100ths, I'm going to go put it right back up here where my original question was. I know that means I have a 6 in the tens place and a 9 in the hundreds place. So 3/10 times 2 3/10 equals 69/100ths. And just as we saw with fractions, sometimes when we multiply decimals, our answers actually get smaller than one or perhaps both of the numbers we started with. Let's use that same process on another problem, and you'll get a chance to try it and see how you did. So we have 6/10, and we want to multiply it by 12/100ths. Go ahead and turn these both into fractions, equivalent fractions, and use that to help you multiply so that we can then figure out what our product is. Make sure you pause the video, and when you're ready, you can check and see how you did. How'd you do? I got an answer of 72/1000, which would be 72 thousandths. To write that, of course, that means I need to make sure that I end up in the thousandths place with my 72. So my answer would be written this way, 72 thousandths. Using fractions is a great way for us to multiply decimals if we aren't sure yet what to do with these decimals. Of course, we will soon be finding an algorithm that helps us skip this process in between. If you already notice something as you're doing these, start making those connections and thinking about that algorithm that maybe you can create for multiplying decimals. But before we get into that, let's go ahead and have you try one on your own. So we have 2/10 times 8/10. And of course, first you'll want to turn it into fraction form. I'll just jot that here so you remember that. And then you can use that to find your answer that you'll then put back into decimal form. And of course, the essential question was, how do we use fractions to multiply decimals? And we will look and examine this a bit more together in class.